shadow of the Great War is long and dark and lies over my generation. My grandfather died, having served 4 years from 1914. He was killed in October 1918, torpedoed on a harmless little craft going from Calais to, I think, to Bristol by a U-boat. The U-boat itself was sunk 3 days later. So, futility of war. So he died. My father was 4 when he died, so my father had no father, in a sense. I had no grandfather. My family must have been knocked sideways, put it mildly, by this event. But this is typical of tens of thousands of British families, or families around the world, that suffered personally and directly as a result of the Great War. From direct experience, I can say how important for my family these memorials are. It was a place to go, a place to remember, a place where the sacrifice of my grandfather was apparently, or literally, was remembered, and that was important. And another layer is that the places like this, where the sacrifice is remembered, are places of architectural beauty and dignity and solidity. The idea that the name liveth forevermore is built into the fabric of these structures. They are strong, they're built to last, and that's the point, isn't it? When one says one's name, the name liveth forevermore, you actually, you mean it. Liveth forevermore, it's like for eternity, it must endure, because the sacrifice was so terrifically huge that the memory of that sacrifice should endure. And that's why, from a youth, I got that sense of what the Imperial War Graves memorials were about. It is an amazing project, isn't it? The Imperial War Graves Commission, now the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. It faced an impossible job to try and give some dignity and some sense of order to the meaningless, we now feel meaningless, the vast killing of the First World War. How do you confront that? And to attempt some achievement of order through art and architecture is amazing. Art and architecture and gardening and gardens. Basically the use of beauty to try and create, where people died, a sense of some civilization in a world of barbarism. And the fact is, the challenge was tremendous. I mean, the shadow cast by the First World War is so long and so dark. My generation certainly is still under that shadow. It's still very hard to comprehend the horror, the suffering, the anguish and the sacrifice of my grandfather's generation. My grandfather's here, he was a Royal Marine, went through the whole war and killed in October 1918. So, that's a typical story. 1 million British and Commonwealth soldiers died in that war. 1 million. One says it rolls off the tongue as if somehow it's an everyday fact. It's so shattering. So therefore, what the war graves achieved is amazing, because it does give, like that here, some sense of dignity, and of course remembrance to the sacrifice made by these people. So I think many things I think of the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, but the biggest thing I think of is that it succeeds in an almost impossible task, creating a legacy which still actually tells a story which is so worth telling. Well, the biggest challenge for the Commission, of course, was the obvious one of how do you make some sense of this mass industrialized killing. It had to do something. So many people made such sacrifices, they had to be commemorated. And so they choose great architects, and they choose a classical language and abstraction. No matter what one's class in life at the time, or one's rank in the army, or one's religion, the idea was everyone should be remembered in a similar, uniform manner, because death, the Grim Reaper, is uniform. There are no distinctions. If you make a sacrifice for a country, you've got to be treated in the same way, whether you're a private or a general. And of course, the imperial armies are mostly not Christian, the Hindus and Muslims, and so it had to be applicable to the faiths of all the people who'd made the sacrifice, high and low and so on. That was quite a challenge in the early 20th century, an age of hierarchies and so on and so forth. So that was one of the big issues, and much debated, and also the whole notion of it not being a specifically, distinctly Christian event. The memorials and even the headstones had to be speak beyond the Christian religion. Again, that was a challenge for many people in the early 20th century. Partly this idea of creating a sense of England abroad. These graveyards should somehow speak of Englishness, and so English plants, as well as some out of Europe, some local plants, as in Turkey, would be brought in. But, creating this sort of English paradise where man had made a sense of hell, of the battlefield, very important. And they're beautiful. Beautiful not just because the dead would recognise it, more importantly, that the grieving relatives, would feel at home there. That was very important, wasn't it? That the people who'd lost their brothers, their fathers, their sons in that war should feel some possibility of going to a place where they could grieve and could have some sort of final relationship with the dead. Another of the astonishing aspects of the Commission's work, the Imperial War Graves Commission as it was then, was eternity. These memorials are to endure. The people that made the sacrifice should be remembered for millennia to come. This was an intention. Their name liveth forevermore. That means something. It means their name liveth forevermore, not to be forgotten in one generation. So that the objects had to have a sense of toughness that they could endure. I mean, Lutyens' Stone of Remembrance is a fascinating example. Again, one of the abstract. It's like a great altar. Perhaps it's an altar. It is greatly debated. It's a big lump of Portland stone that goes up in the main cemeteries, larger cemeteries in Belgium, France, and indeed in Turkey, Gallipoli. And there is Kipling's chosen phrase in the Bible, the name liveth forevermore. And they talk about these stones enduring for 2,000 years, as in ancient Egypt, say, so that people would know in the future, if the British Empire is forgotten and all that somebody made some great sacrifice on that plot of land for some big reason. So so it's only a couple of generations, and since it happened. But one has the sense, that these things will endure, and that, in a sense, is one of the most amazing aspects. Everything was built with eye to eternity, so the name of the dead really would liveth forevermore.